I know it's only a couple of weeks that we weren't meeting for over the last 2 Sundays in this way, but I really missed it, and it's so good to be able to enjoy worshipping together this morning again and just enjoying God's presence together. Emmanuel Sheffield has now existed for just about 2 years, and in fact in 2 weeks' time, on the 18th, we're going to have Krispy Kreme donuts or something to celebrate the fact that it's our second birthday. And when Jude and I and others who moved from Oxford first started to hear God about moving to Sheffield, ultimately we came simply because we really believed that's what God was asking us to do. We made that decision and that choice because we believed God had spoken. And as we get to this 2-year mark, I've been thinking about how really we want to and we intend to carry on leading the church and hopefully being a church that acts in that same kind of way, that we hear God in faith and we choose to go for it. As a leadership team, we feel that it's the kind of right moment to remember that at this point in time we are still a church plant for a number of reasons which I won't fully get into now, and there is still much pioneering for us to do as a church. Now is not really a season to seek comfort, but a time to press on in kind of courageous, risk-taking faith. And to be honest, thinking of the bigger picture, I think that's kind of really true all the time in God's heart of our lives. It's not really something that's true just right at this moment. God's dream over our lives isn't that we'd seek to be as comfortable as possible. God's dream over our lives is that we'd live totally all in for Him. And a life well lived for God always involves courageous, risk-taking faith. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're burning ourselves out and pushing ourselves beyond what we can cope with. Sometimes it takes courageous, risk-taking faith to stop and do nothing and trust God as well. But it does always look like courageous, risk-taking faith. And courage actually is one of a number of cultural areas that we've highlighted as a church family together as kind of vital for us to fight for and maintain. So under a wider theological value of believing that church is meant to be family and seeking here to build this church as a healthy family, we highlighted 3 key areas which were courage, honour and generosity as vital areas for us to really fight for and to maintain amongst us as a community. And we picked those areas not just because we think we need to get better at them, but also recognising they're things that were already true amongst us as a community. And so to help us in all these areas, but perhaps especially courage, we're going to kick off this new academic year with a series called Going Deeper, and we're going to be considering over the next 4 weeks 4 things that help us to draw closer to God as our loving Father. Firstly, prayer. Secondly, fasting, which we're going to look at next week. Thirdly, worship. And 4th, welcoming the Holy Spirit. To be honest, each week will just be a little bit like dipping the toes in the water of topics that could be whole series in themselves. But the intent of it, the overall effect of it, is to start the year going, we want to go deeper with you, Father God. And our aim is not to be legalistic and rulesy about it, like do this, and you'll be better, you'll be closer to God, you'll be a better person, etc., etc. But rather, our aim is that in these preachers there would be kind of Holy Spirit revelation moments, we're hoping, and trusting for us, where something clicks and God reveals something afresh that helps us genuinely go deeper with Him, to help us build deeper with our Father. So today then we come to prayer. There was this one day when Jesus' disciples greeted Him. He was coming back from His regular time and place of prayer. It's recorded in Luke 11, and on this occasion, they didn't just say, hi, how was your time praying? They were hi, but then one of them asked, Lord, teach us how to pray. And fortunately for us, Jesus didn't say no, He went on to teach them how to pray, and that's recorded in the Bible for us as quite a famous part of the Bible actually, the Lord's Prayer. And that's really, really helpful to us because Jesus gave us quite a clear model of what His intention was for prayer. And I've called today's talk, Getting to Prayer. I was going to do a talk that was slightly wider ranging on how we pray, and I came to write the talk and realised like actually it's quite hard to do that in a single talk. So instead, I'm just going to focus on actually really how do we get to that place of prayer in the first place. Perhaps the biggest challenge for many of us is exactly that, actually getting round to praying. So the disciples asked that question in Luke 11, but we're actually going to look at a different occasion when he taught that prayer in Matthew 6, because it's a slightly fuller version of the same prayer. And rather than just reading it out, I thought after all this is a prayer, I thought maybe we could pray it together before we get into looking at it. So I know we don't do this much at Emmanuel, we're not that big on the whole liturgy thing, but if I go slow and loud, hopefully you can just join in with me as I go along, and hopefully it'll go okay. So let's pray together. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Well done. I'll just pray for us a bit more as well. Father, thank you for this incredible prayer your Son taught us. Thank you for the power of praying it word for word. But Father, today as we look at this prayer, I pray that you would teach us to pray in a bigger and broader sense as well. Give us revelation of your heart as a father. Help us understand what it really means to be your children who can come and pray to our Father. Thank you for your Son, Jesus, who makes this all possible, breaking down the barriers so that we can come running into the presence of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Thank you for the permission we're given to ask for the big and for the small. Pray for your kingdom to come, but also to pray for our daily bread. God, you are so good. And I just pray that at least some of what I share here today would be helpful. I pray there'll be no sense of guilt or condemnation, but I do pray for Holy Spirit moments where we gain deeper revelation on your heart for us and where we feel drawn to our knees in prayer. Amen. You might have, some of you might be aware that the very final bit of this prayer isn't normally in the main text of your Bibles. So for the kingdom, the power and the glory are yours now and forever. That's normally a footnote in our Bibles because most people believe it was added later. But I just thought I should, in passing, add a comment on that and say I personally have no problem with using it in the prayer or teaching from it because it's clearly something that lines up with the rest of Scripture. Just thought I'd make a comment on that in passing. I experienced a little while back a miraculous answer to prayer that I imagine quite a few of you will be aware of because you were praying for me. Back in June, I unexpectedly ended up in hospital, having been perfectly fine and well before that. Basically, I was in a lot of pain and I turned as yellow as one of the Simpsons characters with jaundice and had bilirubin running through my body, which made me go very yellow. And funnily enough, actually, the Sunday before I went into hospital, someone at church said, "Dave, you're looking really suntanned." And I'm like, well, I don't think I am, really. And then, with hindsight, that was probably because I was already starting to turn yellow with jaundice. But anyway, they thought initially that I had gallstones, but they couldn't find any on the scans, and they kept doing loads of blood tests, but they couldn't basically work out what was wrong with me. And after over a week in hospital, a senior consultant came to speak with me and was basically like, the next thing we need to do is do a liver biopsy, and basically if that doesn't give us any more results, we probably need to send you to a specialist centre in Leeds where they can continue to treat you there. And so I was like, oh wow, it's quite big. And like we realised by that point that I was reasonably seriously ill, but it just felt like it went up another level all of a sudden. But incredibly, the next day a different consultant appeared, and their opening line to me was, miraculously, your bilirubin number has gone down from 144 to 52 overnight, which It's just something apparently that doesn't normally happen. So bilirubin was what was making me go yellow and a clear marker in me being unwell. And actually I found out later that over a 24-hour period, not only had the bilirubin level dropped, but all the blood level kind of markers that had to do with my liver function had improved really dramatically during that 24-hour period. And that doesn't normally happen, I'm told, and if it can happen naturally, but when it does happen naturally, it will take a longer period of time. So the improvement was so good in the end, they allowed me to go home. The consultant actually had to go and get another consultant because they wanted to double check they weren't missing something. And it's no kind of like, looking from our point of view, like it's no coincidence at all that this all happened on the same day that here at Manual you'd arranged a day of prayer and fasting for me. Back in Oxford, the church that we'd come from, they're also having a day of prayer and fasting for me on that day. And also I know that loads of other people around Sheffield and around the country, other church leaders in the city, other church leaders elsewhere, friends elsewhere were praying for me. And it's just an amazing example of what can happen when people pray and seek God. A great example of God answering prayer. And stories like that one can help build our faith in a God who loves to answer prayer. And we should let them. We should let stories like that raise our faith that God loves to answer prayer. But I have to be honest at the same time and say that as well as all these great stories we could tell, we heard other great stories this morning from Ben and Sally, hearing about the answer to prayer they've received around housing and just the ways God has provided for them as they've moved. I can tell you other stories, even from recent weeks, of other people being healed, other breakthroughs around jobs, all kinds of things of God answering prayer. But for all those stories I could tell just as many about prayers that haven't been answered or seemingly haven't been answered. I could tell prayers about people we prayed for years to be healed and they still haven't been. I could tell you prayers about people who used to follow Jesus and I've been praying for ages and they've walked away from him and still haven't come back to him yet. So there's this whole thing around prayer is like, yes, there are amazing answers to prayer, but there's also kind of this frustration and mystery. There's a reality that we have to face when it comes to prayer. And I think even when we hear stories of answered prayer, it can sound in a story like you miss the fact that actually there's been an incredibly painful journey sometimes to the point of that prayer answer. That was helpful in the way that Ben and Sally shared about some of the reality of the journey, not just the answer to the prayer. So the Bible is pretty clear on the importance of prayer. It paints a really clear picture in the life of Jesus, of him regularly finding space and time to pray with his Father. And we see repeated calls throughout the Bible to get to prayer. It says, pray continually. Do not be anxious, but pray. Devote yourself to prayer. Pray to me and I'll listen to you. Ask anything in prayer. Be faithful in prayer. Call on me and I'll answer you. Pray for each other. Confess your sin and ask for forgiveness. Pray for our leaders and those in authority. Pray for daily bread. Pray for God's kingdom to come. Pray for protection from the evil one. And you could go on and on and on. That's just a very small sample of what the Bible has to say about prayer. Prayer, you see, is the most important activity that the human can engage in while in this life on earth. There is no more important thing that we could do than to spend time with our loving Heavenly Father. Yet, here's the thing. I suspect that almost everyone here this morning would agree with that in theory. Yet, I also suspect no one here will put up their hand to say they've mastered prayer. We all struggle with prayer. No one's got it down. No one's got it sorted. There seems to be a gap between the theory and the practice quite often when it comes to prayer, if not pretty much always, if we're honest. Certainly for myself, I'll hold my hand up and say I often struggle to pray. Again, I could tell you stories about the times when I've had really great times praying, but even if you look at the snapshot of my last week, I could tell you about mornings when I've got up and prayed and it's been great. But I could also tell you about mornings when I've overslept. I could also tell you about times when I've got up, and if I'm really honest, I look back on it and I'm like, I I'm not sure I really got to praying at all. Like, I got up and was there. What's the point in that? And that's the reality of it. There's the kind of practical reality, and I've already referred to the kind of frustration and the mystery that we can sometimes experience around when we actually do get to prayer, and the things we're praying for are seemingly unanswered. I think there's 3 big reasons that we struggle to get to prayer, and I want to explore them today, and I think Jesus kindly gives us the answers to them in the prayer that he taught the disciples. So, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. So the first one is God is a good Father. We will find it very difficult to pray if we have an incorrect view of God in our mind. If we have an image of God often kind of scowling and disapproving of us having to kind of twist his arm to even like us or accept us, if we have an image of God that is kind of like a bit distant and far off, or like that kind of parental dad figure who's kind of like, you think he loves you, but he never tells you, so you're not really sure. And he's kind of that distant, kind of far off, kind of, you think he loves you, but you're just not really sure. Then it's unlikely we're going to want to spend time with him if we have those kind of images in mind. The Lord's Prayer is so familiar that we can miss the huge significance about how it starts, because Jesus' Father is our Father. And he teaches us to pray, our Father. So 1 John 3:1, see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. So I think many of the struggles that we face in prayer lie in the fact that we haven't fully grasped who God is and who we are in Jesus. When anyone chooses to follow Jesus, they become his dearly loved children. He delights in you. And if you aren't sure what you think about God or the Christian faith at the moment, I want to encourage you, the Bible teaches you can be drawn into this as well through Jesus. He invites anyone to come to him and know what it is for his Father to become your Father. Pete Greig, church leader and the founder of 24/7 Prayer, says this: after more than 25 years in pastoral ministry, 20 of them teaching on prayer, I come to the conclusion that most people's biggest problem with prayer is God. They envision him scowling, perpetually disapproving, invariably disappointed, and needing to be placated or persuaded in prayer. The deeper we receive our identity as dearly loved children, the greater our desire to spend time with our Father in prayer. We will start to tell him everything, dare to ask him anything, because we know that, as Jesus puts it elsewhere, your Father in heaven loves to give good gifts to those who ask him. Isn't it amazing? God wants to bless you. He's lovingly attentive to your needs, always pleased to see you, predisposed to answer the cries of your heart. Isn't that beautiful? You know, our boys, and my 2 boys, perhaps particularly because of the age and stage they are, they don't really hold back. If they're sad, they share that with me. If they're happy, they share that with me. If they want something, they certainly let me know that. Like, they're persistent in it as well. And you know what? Jesus encourages us to be more childlike in how we approach him and his kingdom. Sometimes when I tell our youngest Jojo off, I think I might have said this before, but I think it illustrates it really well. When he's been naughty and I tell him off, he'll sometimes look at me and be like, but you still love me, don't you, Daddy? Because you told me so, you still love me. And you think, yes, kind of, but, and you have to just say yes. And you see, the thing is, like, I'm far from a perfect dad. I can tell you stories of tons of really poor parenting moments, but I really do love my kids. So how much more true is that of our Father in heaven, who is the perfect dad? The perfect dad. In every way, he loves his children so much. Jesus Christ didn't die to make you right before God so that we'd be scared to approach our Father. He died so there was a way for his Father to be our Father, and so that we could approach him and not be scared in the slightest, because we have permission to run right into the presence of God our Father. Jesus died so that we'd be accepted, so that we know that our Father approves of us. And you know what? We can be absolutely certain of that because our acceptance, our approval, is not based on us at all. It's all based on Jesus. We can be certain because he approves of Jesus. He accepts Jesus because Jesus has done perfectly. And he's done it on our behalf. So God looks at us and we're approved of. We're accepted. We can come straight in. He delights in you. He likes you. He longs to spend time with you. The more that we get this about our true identity as his children, the more that we'll want to press into and spend time in prayer. So going back to that first two lines again, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. If one reason people struggle to get to prayer is not really grasping God's goodness as a Father, then another would be people not really understanding God's godness. I know that's not really a word. You can blame Pete Greg for that and lift it off him again. But it just goes well with the goodness thing. That's what it is. On the one hand, you kind of get that God's a good Father, but if we miss the fact, this second bit, hallowed be your name, to hallow God's name is to treat him with the highest honour and to set him apart as holy. So, for all those who struggle with prayer because they've got this wrong image of God as the scowling, disapproving figure, just as many, I think, struggle because we fail to understand God's holiness. We end up missing the incredible honour and privilege it is to enter into the presence of the King of Kings. We become over-familiar, perhaps, and as Pete Greg again puts it, familiarity breeds apathy until we can be barely bothered to try. Yes, God is our loving Father. Yes, Jesus is our friend. Yes, we don't have to work ourselves up or prove anything to God to enter his presence. Yes, there's nothing we have to do to twist his arm. He's ready to answer our prayers. He delights to answer our prayers. However, it's really important we hold the second line in balance with the first line and remember the fact that our Father, and he is our Father, who loves us very, very much, is also the holy, holy, holy King of Kings, the Lord of the universe, the Alpha and the Omega. He is it. He's the one who is other, totally holy. And it's important to never let our hearts grow cold to the sheer privilege of being able to actually go into the very presence of God. If we get over familiar with it, we forget who we are approaching. Yes, he is our Father, but he is the King of the universe. And I think there's perhaps two specific things to highlight on this, getting God's goodness, getting God's godness. I think there's two specific areas where not fully grasping this can be particularly tricky. One would be around unconfessed sin. So God is holy and other, but also he's a loving Father. So unconfessed sin is a problem because God is holy and other. But it's not a problem, on the other hand, because we have a loving Father who is ready and willing to forgive. But we do need to bring stuff that's in our lives and getting in the way of our relationship with God. It needs repenting of. It needs confessing and to be dealt with. Otherwise it can become a barrier in our relationship with God. Secondly, disappointment around unanswered prayer. I think not dealing with the reality of when we ask God for things and it's not come off, or even just broader disappointment with God in some sense. That can lead to all kinds of trouble going on in our hearts, which can become a really dangerous barrier to approaching him. And again, we need both these things, God as our good Father and the reality of God as God, to be able to deal with that. God as our loving Father, we can tell him anything. We can be totally honest. We can say exactly where we're coming from. Just look at the Psalms. The honesty there is incredible. But also, on the other hand, he is the God of the universe still, worthy of our honour and respect. And also, removing the God of the universe from a situation never makes it better. Trying to turn our back on him, trying to pretend he's not really God anymore, doesn't fix the situation. It doesn't change the reality, but that can often be our approach when disappointment grows into cynicism and bitterness can be to begin to shut God out. I've never found a situation or a person who's kind of, certainly in my experience, I've never kind of come across a time when it's done me good to push God away. I can't think of a single example where that's helped me. So, grasping the goodness and the godness of our Father is essential for a healthy and persevering prayer life. Do you understand God is your Father who loves you? Have you grasped that God is holy and other and the King of the universe? Do you get that it's an utter privilege and honour just to be able to pray to Him? We're able to communicate with the God of all. Now, as I ask, have you got this? The answer for all of us hopefully won't be, yes, I've totally got this. There is deeper revelation needed for every single one of us. Until we're with Him face to face, there will be a need for continually getting this to a deeper and deeper level. The more we get it, though, the more we'll be able to press into prayer. I want to offer one other reason we might struggle with prayer as well, which is not realising it's a battle. So going to the very final part of the Lord's Prayer, and lead us not into temptation and deliver us from the evil one. We're at war. And there's nothing more dangerous than being at war and not realising you're in one. But that's the reality. Our fight isn't against flesh and blood, but we are in a battle. We're in a fight. There's a fight going on over your soul. There's a fight going on over everyone's souls. Not only is there a battle in terms of like our own weakness, like oversleeping when you are meant to be praying, etc. But there is a battle with a real enemy as well. The evil one, Satan, or the devil, other names the Bible gives him. And we don't want to give him too much credit, because Jesus has won and will win. However, at the same time, it's important to recognise that there is nothing he would like more than to stop you getting to prayer as one of God's children. There is absolutely nothing he would delight in more than stopping you getting into God's presence and enjoying being with your Father. We're at war, and God hasn't called us to comfort, but into battle. To step out into courageous faith, we must grow in prayer. And so, I'd just say, I guess with this battle one, it's like, I think it just helps to realise when you're trying to perhaps grow in your prayer life, to realise that there might be someone else trying to work something else in your life at the same time, trying to stop you getting there. Ever wondered why sometimes it's a real challenge to get to a prayer meeting or to just get on your knees in the morning before God? In a way that bizarrely it's not with other things. It's because there is a real battle going on. We don't want to overplay it. And we also have to recognise sometimes it's just us, just our weakness and our inability to do it. We don't want to give him credit where credit's not due, but there is a fight to be had. So we've been focusing on barriers that can stop us getting to prayer in the first place. But just before I give a few practical things to close, I just want to briefly encourage you about the content of our prayers as well. This is where I've written a whole lot of talk, which you're glad I'm not going to give. So the bit of the prayer where verse 10 and 11, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily breads. I just wanted to make just one short comment on this bit, which is praying is a much more than coming to God with a shopping list. We're talking about building a relationship with the Father where we can talk to him and have a conversation. However, I think if you push that too far, we lose the fact that Jesus also makes it very clear that we're meant to ask him for the things that we need, and we're meant to pray really big, your kingdom come, and really small, give us our daily bread, and everything in between. There is no realm that is kind of beyond what we should be praying about. There's no thing that's too small and no thing that's too big for us to bring to God in prayer. Just say, if you want help and ideas on how to not just get to praying in the first place, but how to pray, I would highly recommend some of Pete Gregg's resources. And I know I've referred to him a lot already, but He's written a book called How to Pray, which is definitely the best book I've ever read on like just really practical, really biblical all at the same time, and he writes well. He's also got a website based around a prayer course that he's designed, and there is a freely available course on that website. But in that website, more realistically, perhaps than going home and doing a course on your own on the website, where you're very welcome to do that, obviously. There's a whole list of resources that he calls a toolshed, which just has these brilliant little PDFs with suggestions on how to approach prayer in different areas, in different ways. It's just really, really helpful. So I just wanted to flag that. Rather than starting to get too nuts and bolts in this morning, I just want to point you towards that. So just 5 quick encouragements before we worship and pray again. I just want to get fairly practical for us about how we get to prayer. Number 1, plan to pray. I had a conversation with a student a few years back when I was living in Oxford. Really lovely guy, and he was telling me that he didn't believe in kind of setting aside regular times to pray. So I was like, well, why not? And he was like, well, there's this guy called Brother Lawrence. And I was like, yeah, I know who he is, some old dude. And he was like, well, his philosophy is basically that we just enjoy God's presence all the time. And I was like, you clearly read him, but not very much. But anyway, he's got a lot more to say about prayer than just that. And I was like, great, okay, Brother Lawrence was a good guy, but you're probably forgetting to think about Jesus. I'm like, I don't know how to put this without sounding quite blunt. Like, in Jesus, we see someone who regularly set aside times to go away and pray. And we probably should think about his model before modelling our prayer life on some other old saint as good as that person was. And to be fair, he took that challenge really well and took that on board and I think started to apply it to his life. But if you want to grow in prayer, it won't happen without some intentionality behind it. And yes, there is a lot of merit in that whole idea of trying to be in communication with God all the time, trying to practice his presence would be the kind of Brother Lawrence line that guy I referred to. And that there's loads of wonderful things that can be enjoyed by trying to be aware of what God's doing all the time, trying to pray at every opportunity. We have free space in our mind, all really good. But if Jesus himself needed set aside times to go and pray, then I'm pretty sure we do as well. There's no rules about exactly when or how. A daily rhythm of prayer is brilliant, but there are some seasons of life when that might not be entirely possible. And you've got to be realistic about how you think it through. Mornings work for many, but for others, before bed or another time might work better. It doesn't really matter exactly how long you spend in prayer. One thing I find to encourage people often as well is, I think a frequent scenario is someone plans to spend some time praying, but then most of the time's already gone, there's only 5-10 minutes left, so they don't bother doing it. I'd encourage you still use that 5-10 minutes. If you set aside like half an hour to go and spend praying, and you end up with just 5 minutes, go for it for 5 minutes. Make the most of that moment that you do have, and just don't get weighed down by guilt and let the enemy stop you getting to it. It's like you just feel more and more guilty because I haven't got to this place for ages and ages. God loves it whenever you come to him. He's waiting to welcome you with open arms. Another thing in the planning to pray bit would be sometimes it helps people to have a certain place to pray. And in fact, it seems that Jesus possibly had a certain place to pray, because it says when that bit that I was referring to at the beginning in Luke, it talks about him coming back from a certain place. It seems like Jesus might have even had a particular place that he went to on a regular basis to go and pray. So it could be a room or a chair. It might be, like Jesus, that you go off up into the hills and that's how you pray best. It might be something that you find easier to do when you're being active or part of being active. It might be you run somewhere and you find a space out somewhere where you pray and when you run back. Get creative with it. There's no rules on how you do this. The important thing is getting your heart connected to God and planning times to do that. Secondly, pray with other people. It's our Father, not my Father. And there's good reason for that. It's something we're meant to do with others. Yes, there is incredible value, and Jesus models the need for that kind of personal prayer and getting away to be with Father on our own. But also, praying together is immensely important. And for whatever reason, the Bible seems to say there's greater significance and greater power when people come to pray together, because he says, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. There's power behind gathering to pray. Our stage of a church plant, I think it's really important that we learn to pray together. We have so much to pray for together. It's going to be a fight because the enemy doesn't want us to get better at prayer and grow at prayer together, but it's so important. We have a prayer week coming up. Let's go for it. Let's throw ourselves all into praying. Let's pray our hearts out to our wonderful, loving Father. We need a bigger venue. We have a city and a nation facing a cost of living crisis. We have people that we're supporting in other nations around the world who are looking to us to pray for them. We need to hear God's voice for our direction. And that's before we've even got to the numbers of needs amongst us to pray for, where people need healings and breakthroughs. And there's so much for us to be calling out to God for together. And beyond that kind of things that we've got to ask God for, there's something special about just simply enjoying God's presence as Father together. When we gather to pray for no reason other than to get to our Father, to enjoy Him. So go for it. Go for it in groups as well. When we gather informally, there's no rules. If you want to gather a few people to pray with them, go for it. Prayer, it just can't be over-encouraged or overdone. Number one, I'd say showing up is huge. Living in a world of uncommitment, just showing up is really big. Whether you're talking turning up to a church prayer meeting when you really don't want to, or keeping a time that you plan to spend on your own with God, just turning up, I think is absolutely huge. I think it's an underrated form of worship. To show up when you're not really feeling like it, it's costly, it costs us more, and I think that's really, really precious to God. It's kind of a beautiful form of worship. And we're not talking about getting legalistic or other people forcing you to be there or anything like that. But when you deep down know that you want to get to prayer and it's your heart to do that, getting to it and showing up is massive. It doesn't always go like this for me, but there's so many times when I didn't really want to get to prayer in the morning, I've actually done it, and then just the huge blessing of actually getting to it has been massive. There's other times as well, I've got to be honest, when it's just bad from start to finish, where it just it doesn't go very well, it doesn't feel any better, and the whole thing. But the good news is, God moving is not at all dependent on how I feel. God's heard my prayers, whether I was feeling in the zone and feeling great, or whether I was feeling terrible and really down. God's good. Just two more really quick ones as we land this. Leave space to hear God's voice. This was another area where I was I could do a whole other preach, and I'm going to, I'll just literally leave it as that. Prayer isn't meant to be a monologue. It's a conversation with God. Prayer gets dry and gets hard work if it is a monologue. When there's space for us to sense what God's saying through His Word, how He's whispering to us, and we feel Him speaking to our hearts, that's when prayer comes alive, and it's much easier, and that's what prayer is meant to look like. And before I do the final one, I'll just invite Alex and Charlotte to come back up. Final one, remember Father's love for you and don't give up. It was really encouraging actually to hear Ben and Sally referring to the need to just keep going in prayer and just keep persevering. Jesus told a parable to exactly that effect. He told a parable about a persistent widow before a judge, which we won't get into the details of, but he said Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. That doesn't sound great. God is for you. God loves you as a father. Let's go for it in pursuing God in prayer and never give up. Let's go for it as a church family, as we seek the next steps for us as a church, as we seek to pray for a nation that's facing huge numbers of crises right now, of a world that's facing all kinds of challenges right now. We need to get to our Father in prayer. Let's not go for comfort, but seek Jesus and go for all that He has for us. So if you'd like to stand, we're going to sing, and then there'll be opportunity for us to pray as we close.